Darling, your father changed the password. I can't use his card for my shopping anymore. My daughter-in-law's sharp voice cracked through the phone like a whip. I was sitting in my recliner, sipping lukewarm coffee, when I heard it, every word echoing down the hallway, carrying straight into my bones. 30 minutes later, the front door slammed open. My son, my only son, stormed inside, his face red, veins bulging. "Dad, what the hell do you think you're doing?" he shouted. For 68 years, I'd been many things: a husband, a factory worker, a baseball coach, the man who woke at 5 a.m. for 30 years to put food on the table. But in that moment, standing in my own living room, I was nothing more than an obstacle to their plans. My name is Walter Hensley. People around town used to call me Walt. Retired, widowed for 7 years now, I live in the same suburban home where I raised my boy, Everett. It's got a white porch swing out front and a yard I still mow myself, though my knees complain every time. Everett had always been a good kid, or at least, I thought he was. Honor roll student, varsity football, the kind of boy neighbors said would make his old man proud. I was proud. I worked double shifts so he could go to college. I sold my pickup to help him buy his first car. I even cashed out a chunk of my pension to help him with his wedding when he married her. The daughter-in-law. Marla. Expensive perfume, sharper tongue. Always scrolling on her phone, always wanting nicer things. I knew from the start she didn't marry Everett for his heart. She married him for what she thought his family had. The problem is, what's left of this family is just me. Dad, why'd you change the password? Everett's voice cracked like a teenager's, though he was 42. Marla couldn't check out her order, and now she's furious. I set my coffee down slow, staring at the steam curling up like smoke from a fire. "Because, Everett," I said, keeping my voice even, "that card is mine. That pension check is mine. Your mother and I bled for that money. And it's not a toy for shopping sprees." His jaw tightened. I saw the boy I once carried on my shoulders, now a man glaring at me like I was his enemy. "Don't start this again, Dad," he said. "Marla needs things. The kids need things. You barely use your money. What's the harm in helping family?" The harm was that I had been helping. Quietly. 4 years. Their mortgage, their debts, their emergencies. I had given until my savings looked thin, until I had to think twice about groceries. And still it wasn't enough. I stood, my knees popping. "You don't need me to help, Everett. You need to learn to stand on your own 2 feet. I won't bankroll Marla's shopping anymore. Not after what I saw last week." He stiffened. "What do you mean, last week?" I didn't answer. Not yet. Because the truth wasn't just about a password or a shopping spree. It was about the secret I stumbled on, the kind that could tear this family apart. I walked toward the window, the autumn sun slanting through the blinds, stripes of light cutting across the old photographs on the wall. Everett as a boy holding his first baseball glove. My late wife, June, smiling with flour on her nose after baking pies. I pressed my hand against the frame, my heart thudding. "Everett," I said softly, "you and Marla think this is about money. But there are other surprises coming." He blinked, confusion crossing his face. "What surprises?" I turned slowly, letting the weight of my words hang in the room. "Ones you're not ready for." The air grew heavy, the silence deep. He opened his mouth to argue, but I lifted a hand, cutting him off. Because the truth was, I had already started. Quietly. Patiently. A plan years in the making. And neither my son nor his wife had any idea what was about to hit them. Everett stood in my living room, fists clenched, waiting for an answer I wasn't ready to give. His eyes, so like his mother's once, were filled with anger instead of love. I wanted to tell him everything, right there, to unload decades of disappointment, heartbreak, and the truth I had stumbled upon. But some truths can't be rushed. They must be revealed slowly, carefully, like peeling back layers of old wallpaper to show the original wall underneath. I sank back into my recliner, the springs creaking under my weight. At 68, my body didn't move the way it used to, but my mind was sharper than they gave me credit for. Everett saw me as old, fragile, too soft to stand up to him or Marla. But what he didn't know was that age had made me patient, and patience is a weapon. As he glared at me, I slipped back into memory, because to understand why we were standing on opposite sides of a battlefield now, you'd have to understand how we got here. When Everett was born, the world stopped. June was glowing, her hair sticking to her forehead with sweat, her voice hoarse from hours of labor, but she smiled as though she'd been given the universe. I held that boy in my arms, so tiny, so fragile, and I swore then and there that I'd give him everything I had. I grew up poor. My father drank his wages, my mother worked herself sick at a diner, and I learned early that life takes more than it gives. I wanted better for my son. So I worked. Double shifts at the factory, overtime whenever they offered it. My hands were calloused, my back bent, but I came home each night with my shirt soaked in sweat and my heart full. Because Everett was worth it. He was a bright kid, too. Always asking questions, always tugging at my sleeve. Dad, why is the sky blue? Dad, how do you fix the lawnmower? Dad, can I throw the ball with you? I never said no. Even when I was bone-tired, even when my body screamed for rest, I got down on that grass and tossed the ball back and forth until the sun dipped low. I remember the first time he hit a baseball in Little League. The crack of the bat, the ball sailing into the outfield, and Everett running like his legs were on fire. June screamed so loud, people laughed. And I thought my chest might burst with pride. But pride is a fragile thing. By high school, Everett had started to change. He was still a good kid, respectful, hard-working, but the world around him grew louder. Friends with nicer cars, bigger houses, new gadgets. He started to notice the things we didn't have. Dad, why can't we get a new TV? He'd ask, looking at the old boxy set in the living room. Or, Dad, how come Ryan's family goes to Florida every summer? I'd ruffle his hair and say, because Ryan's dad doesn't work the hours I do, son. We may not have everything, but we've got each other. And that's worth more than money. He nodded, but his eyes told me he didn't quite believe it. When June died, everything broke. She'd been the glue, the warmth, the reason this house felt like home. Cancer took her quick, too quick, and I watched the light go out of Everett's eyes the day we buried her. He was 35 then, married just a year. Marla stood beside him at the funeral, dabbing her eyes with a tissue, though I noticed her checking her phone more than once. I tried to be strong, for Everett. I told myself grief would soften us, bring us closer. But instead, it drove a wedge. He leaned on Marla, and Marla leaned on my wallet. At first, it was small things. Dad, we're short on rent this month. Dad, Marla's car needs repairs. I gave willingly, because that's what fathers do. But the requests grew larger, bolder. Vacations, new clothes, gadgets for the kids. Everett stopped asking politely. He started demanding, as if my money was his right. And I, fool that I was, let it happen. The day I decided to change, I was at the grocery store. I'd gone to buy bread, milk, and a pack of ground beef. Simple things. At the register, I swiped my card, and it declined. Walter Hensley. After 40 years of labor, after pouring sweat and blood into my work, I couldn't pay for groceries. Not because I didn't have money, because I didn't have enough left after bailing them out. The cashier gave me that look, the kind that burns more than words. I shuffled out of the store with my pride in tatters. That night, sitting at the kitchen table with June's photograph, I whispered, I can't keep doing this. Not for him. Not for her. And that's when I made the change. I reset the password. I tightened the reins. But the truth, the real reason Everett's anger cut so deep, wasn't just money. It was what I had discovered about Marla. A week before, I'd been at their house, fixing a leaky faucet in the bathroom. Marla had left her laptop open on the counter. I shouldn't have looked. God knows I shouldn't have. But the screen lit up with a message, an email she'd forgotten to close. Can't wait to see you again. Same hotel Friday. Everett will never know. I froze. My blood ran cold. Marla, my son's wife, was cheating. Using my son's devotion, my money, our family name, all while sneaking behind his back. I didn't say a word. Not then. I fixed the faucet, packed my tools, and went home. But that night, lying in bed, staring at the ceiling fan spin slow circles, I realized something. I couldn't just sit back anymore. It wasn't only about money. It was about truth. It was about showing Everett what kind of woman he had tied himself to, and showing Marla that this old man wasn't as weak as she thought. So when Everett stormed into my house that day, shouting about a password, he had no idea that his father already held the detonator to a much bigger explosion. "Everett," I said finally, pulling myself back to the present. "Sit down." He hesitated. His anger was hot, but curiosity flickered in his eyes. He lowered himself onto the couch, leaning forward, elbows on his knees. "What is it, Dad?" he asked. "What do you mean, other surprises?" I studied him for a long time, seeing not the man he'd become, but the boy he once was. The boy who trusted me, who believed I could fix anything. I wanted to fix this. God help me, I did. But some things can't be fixed. They can only be revealed. "You'll know soon enough," I said quietly. His fists tightened again. "Why can't you just tell me?" I looked out the window, at the sun slipping low, casting the yard in gold. My voice came out rough, but steady. "Because sometimes, son," I said, "the truth is something you have to see with your own eyes." Everett's jaw worked. He wanted to press me, to demand answers. But before he could, Marla's voice rang through the phone he still held in his hand, shrill and impatient. "Did he give it back? Did he tell you the password?" Everett's eyes darted to me. He didn't answer her. Instead, he stood slowly, staring at me like he was seeing me for the first time. And in that silence, I knew the war had only just begun. The house grew still after Everett left, the echo of the slammed door rattling my bones long after the sound had gone. I sat in silence, my coffee now cold, my hands shaking slightly, not from fear, but from the weight of years pressing down on me. I leaned back in my recliner, staring at the family photos across the room. June's smile stared back, her eyes alive even in faded frames. God, how I missed her! She had been the soft voice that tempered my rough edges, the warmth in a world that often felt too cold. And she had been the only one who could truly reach Everett when he drifted too far. Without her, everything fell apart. I still remember the night Everett brought Marla home for the first time. June was alive then, bustling in the kitchen, wearing her favorite apron with sunflowers on it. She had baked a pie. She always baked when she wanted to make someone feel welcome. Marla swept in like she owned the place. She was beautiful, no denying that. Sleek hair, expensive perfume, clothes that whispered money. But something about her eyes rubbed me wrong. Cold, calculating, like she was taking inventory of the house instead of meeting the people inside it. June didn't see it. She just wanted Everett happy. She hugged Marla, fed her pie, and laughed at her jokes. I stayed quiet, watching. Later that night, when Everett and Marla left, June nudged me in bed. "She's lovely, Walt. Don't you think?" I rolled onto my side, pulling the blanket up. "She's something." June laughed softly. "You're just being protective. Our boy's a man now. Let him choose." I wanted to believe her. I wanted to trust Everett's choice. But the unease stayed with me, crawling beneath my skin like a splinter you can't dig out. When June got sick, Marla played the dutiful daughter-in-law on the surface. She brought flowers, fussed over June's pillows, posted sweet pictures online. But when June's pain grew worse, when the nights stretched long with coughing and groaning, Marla stopped visiting. "It's too hard for the kids," she told Everett. "They shouldn't see her like that." I knew the truth. It wasn't about the kids. It was about Marla. She couldn't stand being around anything that wasn't shiny, polished, easy. June never said a word against her. Even when she was fading, she whispered to me one night, "Take care of them, Walt. Take care of Everett." I held her frail hand, nodding even as tears burned my eyes. "I will, June. I promise." But looking back now, I realize I misunderstood her words. She didn't mean give until there was nothing left. She didn't mean let Marla drain us dry. She meant protect our son, from the world, and maybe from himself. I failed her. The months after June's death blurred together. The house felt empty, every creak of the floorboards a reminder she wasn't there. I'd catch myself setting 2 plates at dinner, reaching for the passenger side seatbelt in the truck, forgetting she was gone. Everett leaned into Marla more. And Marla leaned into me. "Dad, can you help us with a down payment?" "Dad, Marla's credit cards are maxed out. Could you float us until payday?" "Dad, the kids need new iPads for school." Each time, I said yes. Each time, I told myself it was just for now, just until Everett got steady on his feet. But the steadiness never came. And Marla's hunger only grew. The day I signed a check to cover their overdue mortgage, I looked at my own bank account and saw the number shrink to a shadow of what it once was. My pension, 30 years of broken bones and sweat-soaked shirts, bled away, piece by piece, until I had to second-guess my groceries. That was when I started keeping secrets of my own. I didn't tell them about the lockbox I opened at the bank. Inside, I began to stash the things they didn't know I had. Cash I'd saved from odd jobs. Old war bonds my uncle left me. Even June's jewelry, rings, brooches, pieces too valuable to leave in a house where Marla might accidentally find them. And I didn't tell them about the notebook. Every time Marla or Everett asked for money, I wrote it down. Date, amount, reason. A ledger of every dollar that left my hands for theirs. The notebook grew thick, pages filled with my neat handwriting, proof of years they would rather erase. Someday, I knew, that notebook would matter. The night after Everett stormed out about the password, I sat at the kitchen table with the notebook open, June's photo beside me. "June," I whispered, "I think it's time." I imagined her nodding, her gentle voice telling me to be careful. She never liked confrontation. She was the peacemaker. But I wasn't aiming for a fight. Not yet. I was aiming for truth. And truth has a way of cracking through lies like sunlight through storm clouds. My first move was small. I started talking to the neighbors again. Folks I hadn't chatted with much since June passed. People Marla assumed were too old or too nosy to matter. Mrs. Callahan across the street, who saw Marla sneaking in late at night more than once. Mr. Howard, the retired cop 2 houses down, who'd warned me quietly that Marla's spending habits were well known around town. And even the young couple next door, who'd once overheard a shouting match between Everett and Marla when she accused him of not being man enough to provide. I listened. I took notes. Piece by piece, I built a picture, not just of Marla, but of the damage she was leaving in her wake. But gathering evidence wasn't enough. I needed Everett to see it with his own eyes. One afternoon, I drove to Everett's office. I hadn't been there in years, but I knew his secretary, Grace, still remembered me. She was kind, sharp, and had always looked out for Everett in ways Marla never did. "Mr. Hensley," she said when I walked in, surprised but warm. "How are you holding up?" I gave her a tired smile. Day by day. I was wondering if Everett's around. She leaned closer, lowering her voice. "He's in a meeting. But, can I say something, off the record?" I nodded. Her eyes softened with pity. "Be careful with Marla. I've seen her come in here, raising her voice, demanding money. It embarrasses Everett, but he covers for her. I think he's too afraid to admit what's really going on." Her words struck deep. Everett wasn't blind. He wasn't oblivious. He was scared. Trapped. That was when I knew the truth. If I went after Marla directly, Everett would defend her. I couldn't just tell him. I had to show him. And for that, I needed patience. That evening, back home, I pulled June's picture closer, my fingers brushing the frame. "They think I'm weak," I whispered. "They think they can shout me down, bleed me dry, use me up. But they don't know what I know. They don't know what I've seen." The sun dipped low, shadows stretching across the room. I closed the notebook, slid it into the lockbox, and sat in silence until the stars came out. In my heart, I felt June with me, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel powerless. I felt ready, because I had a plan. And when it was done, Everett would see the truth, not from my lips, but with his own eyes. The days after Everett's outburst passed in heavy silence. He didn't call. Marla didn't either. For the first time in years, I sat in my house without the constant buzz of their demands. You'd think the quiet would have been peaceful. But it wasn't. It was the calm before a storm. I could feel it in my bones, Something was coming. And this time, I would be ready. I started small. A whisper here, a nudge there. First, I called Mrs. Callahan across the street. She'd always been sharp-eyed, the kind of neighbor who noticed everything from who left their garbage bins out too long to who was sneaking in after midnight. "Mrs. Callahan," I said over the phone, "remember when you mentioned Marla coming home late a few nights ago?" "Oh, honey," she replied, her voice raspy with age but steady, "I've seen that woman creeping back at 1 in the morning more than once. Never with your son, either." "Would you be willing to tell Everett, if he asked?" She chuckled bitterly. "I've been waiting for that boy to open his eyes." "Of course I will." One ally secured. Next, I visited Mr. Howard, the retired cop down the block. He spent most afternoons on his porch with a newspaper, his German shepherd at his feet. "Walt," he said, setting down the paper, "haven't seen you in a while." I eased into the chair beside him, lowering my voice. "Howard, you ever notice Marla when she's out in town?" He raised an eyebrow. "You mean with the shopping bags, or with the men that ain't your son?" My stomach tightened, though I already knew the answer. "You'd be willing to tell Everett?" I asked. Howard leaned back, his eyes narrowing. "If it comes to it." "But Walt, you know your boy. He won't believe it until he sees it with his own 2 eyes." That was the truth I was wrestling with. And that's why I knew my plan had to be more than whispers. It had to be undeniable. The idea came to me one night as I sat at the kitchen table, June's picture beside me as always. "June," I whispered, "you were always the gentle one. But sometimes the only way to save someone is to let them hurt first." I opened my notebook, flipping through the pages of dates and amounts, proof of every dollar that left my hands for Everett and Marla. Each page was a chapter in the story of my sacrifice. But Everett wouldn't read numbers. He needed to see betrayal written in flesh and blood. That's when I decided to set the trap. The following week, I drove to the hotel on the edge of town. Not the fancy one by the mall, but the cheaper kind, where curtains stayed drawn and cars came and went at odd hours. The one Marla's email had mentioned. I sat in the parking lot, hands gripping the wheel, my heart hammering. I felt like a man back in his 20s, about to do something reckless. And then I saw her. Marla's car pulled in, shiny and polished as always. She stepped out, heels clicking, her perfume clouding the air even from where I sat. And she wasn't alone. A man climbed out of the passenger seat. Younger than Everett, tall, wearing a suit. He touched her back as they walked inside, casual, like it wasn't the first time. My throat burned. For a moment, I almost flung the door open and confronted them right there. But I forced myself still. This wasn't the time. I couldn't blow the plan too early. Instead, I raised the camera I'd borrowed from Howard. Click, click. Pictures of them walking in together. Pictures that spoke louder than any words I could say. I drove home with my chest tight, the weight of the photos heavy in my pocket. The next step was trickier. Everett was stubborn. He'd defend Marla even if the evidence was laid at his feet. I had to make him question her on his own. So I invited him to dinner. Just him. When he arrived, he looked worn down. His tie was loose, his eyes shadowed. He sat at the table without a word, the silence between us thick. I served roast chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans, his favorite meal when he was a boy. For a moment, as he dug in, I saw the little boy again, the one who used to grin with his mouth full. But then his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, frowning. I caught a glimpse of the name, Marla. "Everything all right?" I asked. He hesitated, then slid the phone face down on the table. "Yeah. She's just out with a friend tonight." I kept my voice even. "A friend?" He nodded, his fork clinking against the plate. "Says it's a girls' night. Shopping, dinner. You know how it is." I leaned back, folding my arms. "Everett, do you ever wonder where she really goes?" His fork froze mid-air. His jaw tightened. "Don't start, Dad." I held his gaze. "Son, you know I'd never lie to you. And you know your mother would have wanted better for you than this. Just ask yourself why she always needs more money, more time, more secrets." He dropped his fork with a clang, his eyes flashing. "She's my wife. You don't know her like I do." I swallowed the words burning in my throat. "Not yet. Not now." Instead, I stood and placed a hand on his shoulder. "You're right. She's your wife. Which is why you deserve the truth. When you're ready to see it." He pushed his chair back, shaking his head. "I don't want to talk about this." And just like that, dinner was over. But the seed was planted. The very next day, I got my chance. Mrs. Callahan called me, excitement in her voice. "Walt, you'll never believe it. Marla just pulled up with that same man again. Not your son. They went into the house together." My heart pounded. This was it. I called Everett. "Son, come home. There's something you need to see." He resisted at first, muttering excuses, but something in my voice must have reached him. 10 minutes later, his car screeched into the driveway. We stood at the window together, the curtains pulled just enough for him to see. Inside his own house, Marla was laughing, leaning close to the man from the hotel. Everett's face drained of color. He pressed his hands against the glass, his breath fogging the pain. "No," he whispered. "No, it can't be." I didn't speak. I let him watch. Let him see. And when Marla kissed the man, right there in his living room, Everett staggered back like he'd been punched. I caught him before he fell. His whole body shook, his chest heaving. "Dad," he choked. "How long? How long has this been going on?" I looked at him, my voice steady. "Long enough." His knees buckled. He sank into the recliner, his face buried in his hands. For the first time in years, my son looked like a boy again. Lost, broken, in need of his father. I placed the photos from the hotel on the coffee table in front of him. He lifted his head slowly, eyes red, and stared at them. There was no denying it now. And as silence wrapped around us, broken only by the muffled laughter from inside the house, I knew the war was no longer mine alone. Everett was finally on my side. Everett sat slumped in my recliner, his face pale, his breathing uneven. The photographs I'd laid before him, Marla walking into the hotel, Marla laughing with a stranger, glared back like silent witnesses. 4 years, he'd defended her. 4 years, he'd dismissed every warning, every doubt. But now, the truth was staring him in the face. And truth has a way of cutting deeper than any blade. I stood nearby, hands on the arm of the couch, waiting. My heart ached for him, but I forced myself still. This wasn't the moment for comfort. It was the moment for clarity. Finally, Everett lifted his head. His eyes were bloodshot, rimmed with tears he refused to let fall. "I don't believe this," he whispered. She wouldn't do this to me." I said nothing. He rubbed his face, his jaw tightening. "It has to be a mistake. Maybe that guy's a friend, a coworker." "Everett." My voice was firm, sharper than he expected. "You saw her. You saw them." His lips trembled, his defenses collapsing piece by piece. He looked at me then, really looked, and for the first time in years, I saw the boy I'd raised, not the hardened man shaped by Marla's shadow. "What do I do, Dad?" he asked, his voice breaking. The answer wasn't simple. If Everett confronted Marla too soon, she'd twist it back on him. I knew her kind, slick words, crocodile tears, blame-shifting until Everett questioned his own eyes. "You don't do anything," I said carefully. "Not yet." His brow furrowed. "Not yet. She's in my house, Dad. With another man." "I know," I said, keeping my tone steady. "But if you storm in now, she'll deny it. She'll say it was innocent. She'll turn it around on you. And you'll end up the villain in your own marriage." He stared at me, stunned. "So what, I just sit here while she—" "No," I cut in. "You sit here and you watch. You let her bury herself. Because once she realizes you're not chasing, not paying, not bending anymore, that's when she'll show her true face. And when she does, you'll be ready." Everett's hands curled into fists. His anger burned hot, but beneath it, I saw the shame. The humiliation of a man betrayed not just by his wife, but by his own blindness. I reached out, resting a hand on his shoulder. "Son, I know this hurts. I wish to God I could take it away. But sometimes pain is the only teacher. And right now, it's teaching you who she really is." For a long moment, we sat in silence. Outside, Marla's laughter floated through the thin walls, cruel and sharp. Finally, Everett stood, wiping his face. "All right," he said hoarsely. "I'll wait. But the second she slips, I'm done. I swear, Dad, I'm done." I nodded slowly. But inside, I knew the battle was just beginning. The next morning, Marla waltzed into my house like nothing had happened. Her perfume hit first, sweet and overwhelming, followed by her voice, syrupy and sharp. "Walter," she said, flashing a smile, "we need to talk about that password again." Everett, standing in the kitchen, froze. I saw the muscle in his jaw twitch, but he didn't speak. Marla sauntered closer, her heels clicking on the tile. "I tried to check out some things online, and it's just ridiculous I can't use the card anymore. You know I'm only doing it for the family." I set down my coffee cup deliberately, meeting her gaze. "The family doesn't need another handbag, Marla." Her smile faltered, just for a second, before she turned it toward Everett. "Do you hear this? Your father thinks I'm wasting money on nonsense. You know better, don't you, Everett?" I held my breath. This was the test. Everett's eyes flicked to me, then back to her. His lips pressed into a thin line. "Maybe Dad's right," he said quietly. The color drained from Marla's face. She blinked, her charm faltering. "Excuse me." "You heard me," he said, louder this time. "Maybe you don't need to use his money." I nearly smiled. The first crack. Over the next week, the cracks widened. Everett grew distant, answering Marla with short replies, refusing to jump when she demanded. I could see the confusion in her eyes, the panic hiding behind her painted smile. She tried every trick in her book: sudden affection, guilt trips, even tears. But Everett didn't bend. One night, I sat on the porch swing, the autumn air cool against my skin, when Everett joined me. He sat heavily, staring at the stars. "She's different now," he said. "I see it. I don't know why I never saw it before." "Because you wanted to believe in her," I said gently. "That's not weakness, son. That's love. But love without truth is just a leash." He nodded slowly, his hands gripping the edge of the swing. "I think I want out, Dad. I just don't know how." I turned to him, my voice steady. "Then let me help you. One step at a time." The first step was protecting what little I had left. I updated my will, moved my savings into accounts Marla couldn't touch, and tightened every corner of my finances. The second step was gathering more proof. Every time Marla slipped away, every time she lied about where she was, I wrote it down. Dates, times, witnesses. Piece by piece, I built a wall she couldn't climb. And the third step was waiting. Because sooner or later, people like Marla reveal themselves. They can't help it. Greed has no brakes. It happened 2 weeks later. Everett came home early from work. He walked into his bedroom and found Marla on the phone, pacing, her voice sharp and low. "No, listen, he's pulling away. But don't worry. Once his dad's gone, the money's ours. Just be patient." Everett froze in the doorway, his stomach twisting. "What did you just say?" he demanded. Marla spun around, her face paling. "Everett, oh, it's not what you think." "Not what I think," he shouted. "You just said once my dad's gone. What the hell does that mean, Marla?" She stammered, her charm crumbling. "I just meant, financially, you know, when he passes, naturally, the inheritance." "Enough!" Everett roared, his voice breaking. "Do you think I'm blind? Do you think I don't know what you've been doing?" Marla's face twisted, her mask gone. "You're pathetic, Everett. Pathetic. You can't even provide for your own family without running to your old man. Do you think I want to spend the rest of my life scraping by with a loser?" The words sliced him open. But instead of crumbling, Everett straightened. "You're done," he said, his voice low and steady. "Pack your things. Get out." Marla's mouth fell open. "You can't be serious." "I'm dead serious." Silence fell heavy between them. Finally, she hissed, grabbing her purse. "You'll regret this. Both of you." She stormed out, her heels clattering down the hall. The door slammed, rattling the walls. And just like that, the house was quiet. That night, Everett came to me. His face was pale, his eyes hollow, but there was something new in him too. Strength. Resolve. "She's gone," he said simply. I nodded, my chest tight. "Good." He sank into the chair across from me, his hands trembling. "Dad, I'm sorry. For everything. For letting it get this far. For choosing her over you." I reached across the table, gripping his hand. "You don't have to apologize. You just have to do better. For yourself. For the kids. For your mother." Tears welled in his eyes, but this time he didn't fight them. They rolled down his cheeks as he bowed his head. For the first time in years, my son came back to me. But even as we sat together in the quiet, I knew the war wasn't over. Because Marla wasn't the type to walk away quietly. And deep down, I could feel it. This was just the beginning. The morning after Marla stormed out, the house felt lighter, like someone had cracked open a window after years of suffocating air. Everett slept for almost 12 hours straight, something I hadn't seen since he was a teenager. But peace never lasts long when someone like Marla is involved. By the third day, her shadow crept back. Not in person. Oh no, she was too clever for that, but in the form of papers slipped under Everett's front door. Legal papers. Divorce filings. I was the one who found them. I'd gone over to drop off some groceries, and there they were, sitting like a snake coiled on the mat. I picked them up, my stomach tightening as I read the words, "Petition for dissolution of marriage." When Everett saw, his face drained of color. She's divorcing me?" "She's not just divorcing you," I muttered, flipping through the pages. "She's coming for everything." The documents listed demands that made my blood boil. Half of Everett's pension, half the house, spousal support for 10 years, and primary custody of the kids. "She wants the kids." Everett choked out. "After everything she's done?" I put a hand on his shoulder. "This isn't about the kids. This is about control. About money. She knows the children are your heart, and she's using them as leverage." The weeks that followed were brutal. Marla's lawyer was sharp, ruthless, and expensive, clearly funded by money she'd siphoned away long before she left. He painted her as the devoted wife, the selfless mother who had endured a neglectful husband and an overbearing father-in-law. In her filings, she claimed Everett had been emotionally abusive, that he withheld money to control her, that she'd been forced into secret relationships because of his coldness. Lies. All lies. But lies are dangerous in court. Everett sat at my kitchen table night after night, his head in his hands. "How can she do this to me? To the kids?" I sat across from him, steady as stone. "Because she doesn't care about the truth. She cares about winning. Which is why you can't play her game. You have to play smarter." He looked up, broken. "I don't know if I can, Dad." I leaned forward, my eyes burning into his. "You can. Because you're not alone. I hired a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, but an old friend from my days working at the post office, Harvey Klein. He was semi-retired, but sharp as a knife and meaner than a cornered dog when it came to cases like this. "Walter," he said when I called him, "I don't usually take on family messes anymore. But for you, and for your boy, I'll make an exception." The first time Everett met Harvey, he was skeptical. Harvey was wiry, balding, with a permanent scowl and suspenders that looked older than I was. But within 10 minutes, Everett realized the man was a bulldog. "She wants spousal support." Harvey snorted, flipping through the papers. "With her employment history, she'll be lucky to get gas money. And custody. Huh. No judge is going to hand kids over to someone with a trail of late-night hotel visits and luxury spending habits. We'll bury her in her own lies." For the first time in weeks, Everett allowed himself a small smile. But Marla wasn't done. When she realized Everett wouldn't cave, she turned to manipulation. The kids came home from one weekend visit with her unusually quiet. Little Sophie clung to Everett's arm, whispering, "Mommy said you don't want us anymore. She said you're giving us to Grandpa." Everett's face twisted in pain. He knelt, pulling both children close. "That's not true. Not true at all. You are my whole world." I watched from the doorway, fury boiling inside me. Using children as pawns, that was Marla's lowest move yet. And I knew she was only getting started. One evening, as Everett and I sat reviewing documents with Harvey, the doorbell rang. When Everett opened it, Marla stood there, dressed in a sleek black coat, her lips painted crimson. She looked like a villain stepping straight out of a movie. "Everett," she said sweetly, ignoring me completely. "We need to talk." He stiffened. "There's nothing to talk about, Marla. That's what the lawyers are for." She sighed dramatically, stepping closer. "Do you really want to drag this through court? Think about the kids. Think about how ugly this will get." "You mean think about what you'll lose," I said from the table. Her eyes flicked to me, narrowing. "Stay out of this, Walter. You've poisoned him against me long enough." Everett bristled, but before he could speak, she leaned closer, her voice dropping to a hiss. "If you don't agree to my terms, I'll make sure the court hears every little story about you. About your drinking in college. About the night you shoved me during an argument." "That never happened," Everett snapped. She smirked. "Doesn't matter. Judges don't care about the truth. They care about the story. And I'm very good at telling stories." I stood, my fists clenched. "Get out of my house, Marla." She straightened, her mask slipping back into place. "Fine. But don't say I didn't warn you." She swept out the door, leaving a trail of perfume and poison behind her. The trial dragged on for months. Each court date felt like a battlefield, with Marla spinning lies and Harvey dismantling them piece by piece. Everett grew stronger through it, his spine hardening each time he stood in front of the judge. One day, after a particularly brutal session where Marla accused him of endangering the kids by letting me babysit, her lawyer painting me as an unstable old man, Everett pulled me aside. "Dad," he said, his eyes fierce, "I don't care if it takes everything I have. I'm not letting her win." I gripped his shoulder, pride swelling in my chest. "That's my boy." The turning point came when Harvey presented bank records showing Marla had been funneling money into a secret account for years. The judge's eyebrows shot up, and even Marla's lawyer looked blindsided. The room shifted that day. For the first time, it wasn't Everett on the defensive, it was Marla. But victory didn't come easy. Late one night, I got a phone call. It was Everett, his voice shaking. "Dad, she took the kids. She didn't bring them back after her visit." My blood ran cold. "Call the police. Now." By dawn, officers had tracked Marla down at a hotel 2 towns over. She claimed it was a misunderstanding, that she just wanted extra time. But the damage was done. The court saw it for what it was, parental alienation. From that moment on, Marla's grip slipped. The day of the final hearing, the courtroom buzzed with tension. Marla sat across from us, her once perfect hair frizzed, her smile brittle. Everett sat tall beside Harvey, his hand steady for the first time since this nightmare began. When the judge delivered the verdict, joint custody, no spousal support, and a financial penalty for her hidden accounts, Marla's face collapsed. Everett exhaled, a weight lifting from his chest. I squeezed his arm, tears burning in my eyes. But as we walked out of the courthouse, Marla shot us one last look, venomous and cold. "This isn't over," she whispered. And I knew she meant it. For weeks after the final hearing, the house felt calmer. The constant dread, the shouting matches, the endless paperwork, it was all behind us, at least on the surface. Everett had the kids half the time now, and when they were with him, the house was filled with laughter again. I'd watch Sophie and Caleb race through the backyard, their shoes kicking up leaves, their giggles chasing one another through the air, and I'd think maybe, just maybe, we'd won. But victories against people like Marla are never permanent. They're only pauses before the next strike. I knew it in my bones. And I was right. It started small. One morning, Everett's car windshield was cracked clean across, as if someone had taken a bat to it. No cameras in his driveway, no witnesses, no proof. He filed a report, but the police shrugged. "Could have been kids messing around," the officer said. Then came the anonymous calls. Everett would answer the phone, and a woman's voice, low, distorted, would whisper things like, "You don't deserve them," or asterisk, "Accidents happen, Everett." Asterisk. The kids heard one of the calls. Sophie cried herself to sleep that night, convinced someone was coming to take her away. Everett was furious. "It's her, Dad. I know it's her." I didn't doubt it. But Marla was too smart to leave a trail. The attack on me came next. I was walking home from the corner store one evening, carrying a bag of apples, when a black SUV slowed beside me. The passenger window rolled down, and a voice hissed, "Stay out of their lives, old man." Then the vehicle sped off, leaving me standing in the glow of a flickering streetlight, the apples rolling across the sidewalk. I didn't tell Everett right away. He already had enough weight on his shoulders. But that night, lying awake in bed, I felt something I hadn't in years: fear. Not for myself, but for him. For the children. For all of us. The next time Marla showed her face, she didn't bother with subtlety. It was Everett's weekend with the kids, and we were all sitting around my kitchen table, playing a clumsy game of Monopoly. Sophie was hoarding her money, Caleb was building hotels on Boardwalk, and Everett was laughing harder than I'd heard him in months. Then the door slammed open. Marla stormed in like a hurricane, her heels stabbing the floor, her eyes blazing. "You think this is over?" she spat, her voice shaking the walls. "You think you can just cut me out and live happily ever after?" Everett jumped to his feet. "Marla, you can't be here. You lost. The judge made the ruling." "Judges can be wrong," she screamed. "You're nothing without me, Everett. Nothing. You think she jabbed a finger at me, is going to save you? He's an old man. He's dying. And when he's gone, you'll come crawling back." The kids were frozen, wide-eyed, clinging to Everett. My heart cracked seeing their little faces twisted in fear. "Get out," I said, my voice like stone. She spun toward me, her hair wild, her lipstick smeared. "You ruined everything. You poisoned him against me. You think you've won, but I'll never let you take what's mine." Everett stepped between us, his body trembling but firm. "They're not yours, Marla. Not anymore. Now get out before I call the cops." For a moment, I thought she'd lunge at me. But then her face twisted into a cruel smile, and she backed toward the door. "You'll regret this," she hissed. "All of you." And then she was gone. The silence she left behind was deafening. That night, Everett sat on my porch long after the kids went to bed. He held his head in his hands, his shoulders slumped. "I can't take it any more, Dad," he whispered. "She won't stop. She's never going to stop." I rested a hand on his back. "Then we have to be stronger than her. We have to end this, once and for all." His head lifted, eyes glistening in the porch light. "How?" "She's untouchable." I leaned closer, my voice low. "No one's untouchable. She's already crumbling. All we have to do is push." In the days that followed, I began to notice her patterns. She'd show up at the kids' school unannounced, trying to talk to teachers, planting seeds of doubt about Everett's parenting. She spread rumors in the neighborhood, whispering that Everett was unstable, that I was senile, that the children weren't safe with us. But every rumor, every stunt only made her more desperate and more careless. One evening, a friend of mine from church, Nancy, pulled me aside. "Walter," she said gently, "you should know. I saw Marla at the pharmacy. She was screaming on the phone, saying she'd make sure Everett lost everything. She didn't notice me, but she was loud. People were staring. That was it. The moment I knew her unraveling was nearly complete. Then came the fire. It was a Friday night. Everett had the kids, and we were all asleep when a loud crack jolted me awake. At first, I thought it was thunder. But then I smelled it, smoke. I stumbled to the window and froze. Flames licked the side of Everett's garage, spreading fast. "Everett!" I shouted, racing down the hall. "Get the kids!" The next minutes were chaos, alarms blaring, children crying, Everett dragging them out into the cool night air. I grabbed the fire extinguisher, but it was useless against the blaze. By the time the fire department arrived, half the garage was gone. The chief pulled me aside after inspecting. "Looks like arson," he said grimly. "Accelerant was used." Everett overheard and staggered toward him. Arson. You mean someone did this on purpose? The chief nodded. Everett's eyes met mine. Neither of us had to say her name. Marla. The investigation went nowhere. No witnesses, no cameras, no evidence tying her directly. But we knew. That night, as the kids slept on cots in my living room, Everett sat across from me, his face hollow. "She's dangerous," he whispered. "Dad, she could have killed them." I nodded slowly, my chest heavy. "Yes." "Which means this isn't just about divorce anymore. This is about survival." His eyes flickered with something new. Not just anger, not just fear. Determination. "What do we do?" he asked. I leaned forward, my voice steady. "We gather every scrap of proof. Every witness. Every slip. We expose her, Everett. Not just in court. To everyone. Friends, neighbors, the community. We show the world who she really is." He swallowed hard, then nodded. "All right. Let's finish this." The next morning, I opened the drawer of my desk and pulled out a leather-bound notebook. Inside were months of notes I'd taken, dates, times, witnesses, receipts. Every manipulation, every stunt, every threat Marla had thrown our way. I slid it across the table to Everett. "This," I said, "is how we win." He opened the book, flipping through the pages. His eyes widened at the detail, the sheer weight of evidence. "Dad," his voice cracked, You've been keeping all this?" I nodded. "From the start. I knew we'd need it." He stared at me, emotion flooding his face. "I don't deserve you." I reached across, gripping his hand. "You're my son. You'll always deserve me." But even as we began to prepare our final strike, I couldn't shake the chill that lingered in my bones. Because Marla wasn't just lashing out anymore. She was cornered. And cornered animals are the most dangerous of all. The fire had proven one thing. She was willing to risk lives to get what she wanted. And deep down, I knew, the next move she made could be her deadliest. The night after the fire, I didn't sleep. I sat in my armchair with a leather-bound notebook open on my lap, flipping through months of entries. Each page was a scar, each note a memory I wished I didn't have to keep. But this wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about ending it, for Everett, for the children, and for myself. By dawn, my plan was set. The first step was community. People like Marla thrived in shadows, whispering lies, twisting stories. But truth, spoken out loud, had power. That Sunday, I went to church early. Pastor Miller gave me a long look when I asked for 5 minutes before the sermon. "Walter," he said gently, "are you sure? This could stir things up." I nodded. It's time people knew. When the congregation gathered, I walked to the front, my notebook in hand. My voice shook at first, but as I spoke, about Marla's manipulation, her lies, the danger she'd put my grandchildren in, the tremor turned to steel. Faces in the crowd shifted from confusion to anger to sympathy. Nancy, who had overheard Marla at the pharmacy, stood and confirmed my words. Another neighbor spoke about seeing strange cars near Everett's house at odd hours. Piece by piece, Marla's mask crumbled, right there in the church pews. By the end, Pastor Miller put a hand on my shoulder. "We'll stand with you, Walter." For the first time in months, I felt less alone. The second step was the law. Harvey filed for a protective order, this time not just for Everett, but for me and the children. The fire marshal's report, combined with testimonies and my meticulous notebook, created a case Marla couldn't easily dodge. But we didn't stop there. Harvey had me call the local paper, then the county news station. A story about a grandmother protecting her family from a dangerous daughter-in-law practically wrote itself. Marla had always cared about appearances, her image, her reputation. And now, that very vanity would be her undoing. The breaking point came 2 weeks later. The custody exchange was set at the courthouse, under supervision, to prevent another scene. Everett was tense, pacing the lobby as we waited. I sat calmly, notebook tucked in my jacket, my eyes fixed on the doors. Then she arrived. Marla swept in wearing a crimson dress, her hair pinned high, her heels clicking like gunfire against the tile. She looked every bit the actress playing her final scene. Her smile was sharp as she approached. "Everett," she purred, "you look tired. Fatherhood weighing you down already." Everett's fists clenched, but he said nothing. Then she turned her gaze to me. "And you, Walter? Still playing detective? Still scribbling in that little book like anyone cares what you think?" I pulled the notebook from my jacket and set it on the table between us. "Actually, Marla, a lot of people care. More than you think." Her smile faltered. Before she could respond, Harvey stepped forward, holding a folder. "Ms. Whitfield, you've been subpoenaed. The DA is investigating arson, fraud, and perjury. I suggest you start worrying less about handbags and more about handcuffs." Her face drained of color. For once, she had no words. The bailiff escorted her out for questioning. And just like that, the storm that had consumed us for years finally began to break. The investigation that followed was thorough and merciless. Marla's secret bank accounts were exposed, her lover testified to her manipulations, and phone records tied her to anonymous threats. The fire couldn't be pinned on her directly, but the pattern of her behavior painted a damning picture. The court stripped her of custody, granting Everett full parental rights. Supervised visitation was allowed, but Marla never showed up for them. Word spread fast in the community, and her once perfect reputation turned to ash. In the end, she left town, vanishing into the shadows she had always thrived in. But this time, the shadows swallowed her whole. The day the final ruling came, Everett and I sat on my porch watching Sophie and Caleb chase fireflies. Their laughter rose into the summer night, pure and free. Everett leaned back, exhaling deeply. "It's over." I nodded slowly. "Yes, it's over." He turned to me, his eyes shining. "Dad, I don't know how to thank you. I would have lost everything without you." I smiled faintly. "You don't need to thank me. Just promise me something. Anything. Be the father they need. Be the man your mother believed you could be. Don't waste this second chance." He swallowed hard, nodding. "I will. I promise." Later that night, after everyone had gone to bed, I sat alone with my notebook. The pages were full, lies, threats, court dates, fire, fear. A history of pain, written in my shaky hand. I closed it gently, then carried it to the fireplace. The flames caught quickly, curling the pages, turning ink to smoke. I watched until the last scrap of paper crumbled into ash. Because the story wasn't mine to carry anymore. It was finished. I stepped outside, the night air cool against my skin. Above me, the stars stretched wide and bright, and for the first time in years, I felt something I thought I'd lost. Peace. Did you like my story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story.